If there was somebody in a wheelchair with no arms and no legs, you wouldn't walk up to them and go, why are you in that chair? Why do people feel the need to come up to me and assume that I am anorexic? There needs to be more awareness for feeding tubes and the reasons why people have them. And then I just pop the lid on. That is ready to kind of be poured into my feed bag. I'm at a point in my health where it's just so unstable, it's so unpredictable, where I can be fine one day and then, well, even the same day, within a few hours, being resourced in the hospital. I started getting problems with my health around 15, 16. I was still at secondary school. I was getting like a lot of pain in my legs, and I went to a few doctors and they just kept saying like, it's growing pains, it's growing pain. I was getting palpitations where you can feel your heart beating. They kept saying, oh, it's just anxiety, it's just anxiety. And then eventually I came to be diagnosed with POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And it's basically a heart condition. I was diagnosed with gastroparesis and then Ehlers-Danlos. That's just going to prime all the air out of the line. I just usually give around 10 mils and I just do that slowly so it doesn't cause too much pain. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome type 3 and that is a connective tissue disorder. As far as dislocations go, I get them daily, multiple times a day. My fingers, shoulders and ankles and knees are my most troublesome joints. Or if I leave the house, I'll put my ankle supports on. The collagen in my body, I have very little of it, so that's basically a protein that holds all your joints together. Crush them up with this tablet crusher, and then I just deliver them, mix them with some sterile water, and then deliver it down my tube with a syringe. I lost a lot of weight very quickly, and at that point my doctor said to me, if you keep losing weight at this rate, we're going to have to intervene. I was trying supplement drinks, and even with that, I stopped tolerating them and I couldn't keep my weight up. You've written hate Man United.
Yeah, I don't have...
When Amy first started to lose weight, I was a little bit concerned. I did think it was an eating disorder. I really thought that was the case, but realising later on after talking to her that that wasn't.
I got a feeding tube because I have gastroparesis, which means my stomach is paralysed and it doesn't empty food properly, so when food goes in, it can't digest.
Hey guys, I have to be really quiet because it is half 2 in the morning. I've been sick about 2 times, just sitting here in the past 10 minutes.
I vomit basically when I eat, but it can be hours and hours and hours after eating. Like the food would just sit there and sit there and sit there. That causes like extreme pain, extreme nausea, general like bloating, discomfort, that kind of thing.
It's really sore. Like, that's my hip bone that's usually really prominent, and it's not like non-existent.
My feeding tube stays in 24/7. I've got no other source of getting my nutrition. I depend on it, I rely on it, it keeps me alive. The feed is ready to be connected, so I just connect that like that, and then I just press run on my pump, and then you can probably hear the pump. It's going to start delivering the feed into my tube basically. It can get uncomfortable if I do a lot of talking or laughing because it moves around in your throat all the time. It does cause pain, especially in my nose.
It's bloody disgusting.
Having something there all the time and rubbing against like your insides, it causes like blisters in your throat. I eat and drink by mouth most days. I try to drink orally as much as I can because I don't want my stomach to just pack up and stop working completely. If my family's sitting down for a meal, I would just have a very small portion. I would just try my best because even if I am sick, there'll be a very small amount of that meal that I will digest, and that's better than nothing. And you know, if I don't, then how am I going to know if I'm getting better?
I suppose it's sort of like having a little newborn baby. You got to prepare anything. Oh, I've got to take that with me. I've got to take that with you, sort of thing, because we're going to be there for however many hours.
I get a lot of stares from the public. You'd be surprised how many people say little comments or point. If it's a small child, I'll just be like, yeah, okay. You know, they're young, they don't understand. But when it's an adult, I would expect them to have a bit more respect. And if I have to vomit in public, a lot of people assume that I have an eating disorder. I've had many people say things like, why do you do that to yourself? That's disgusting. Like, just eat, it's not that hard. And just silly comments like that. It's not an eating disorder. My stomach's paralysed and it doesn't work, unfortunately. I have a lot of days where I don't want to go out, and it becomes very difficult when you've got a feeding tube on your face to hide it. There's currently no cure. Things might improve, but they haven't. But at the moment, I'm actually working with my team of doctors to get a gastric pacemaker, which basically is essentially like a pacemaker for your heart, except it's for your stomach and it's meant to stimulate digestion. When I was getting my first feeding tube, the first place I went was YouTube, and I typed in, I was like, you know, what is a feeding tube? And then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do that, because there's going to be another me that comes along and wants to know about this, and if I can help just one person, then that's amazing. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. How I kind of deal with people staring at my face, how to remove an NG tube. I get hundreds of comments from people saying you've inspired me, but I think really they don't realise that they're inspiring me too. Being able to help people, and I read these comments and it just, you know, it lifts my spirit and it keeps me in a good place mentally, and I couldn't imagine not having that there as a support system now.
What I admire most about Amy, even though she's going through all these dramas, it really doesn't impact on her at all. Some restrictions obviously, but apart from the stuff she knows she can't do, it doesn't stop her doing anything.
A lot of people think that you can't do things with the feeding tube, like you can't swim, you can't shower, but that is not the case. You can do everything anyone else can do. There's nothing that you can't do with the feeding tube. I want to try and live my life as much as I can to the best of my abilities, but I've just kind of got to go a different way about it, you know, take a different road than, say, the average person.